Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today, I'm very excited because I got a free early copy. I had already pre-ordered this on Amazon, but then Sean contacted me and said, "Hey, I got two copies of Dash Shaw's new book, and I think we're going to be doing an interview with him. You want a copy?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, dude! I already ordered that." So I got this in the mail and immediately blew through it and enjoyed it as much as I enjoy any Dash Shaw work. Dash Shaw is one of, I think, the best cartoonists we have going now. Fantastic writer, fantastic cartoonist, and also someone who's always like pushing the boundaries of form. This book, Blurry, actually doesn't push the boundaries of form in terms of comics, which usually I feel like Dash Shaw is doing something formally tricky with the comics, whether it be a visual thing like having just strange colors behind things, or actual like formal tricks of having, like a fold out page, or maps and things that you have to follow, games to play like in Clue. That's part of the reason I love his work so much. This is much more like Bottomless Belly Button, where it's a straightforward story. That one even has a lot more formal things going on in it. This one's very straightforward in terms of like the comics going on in it. It's the visual presentation of the story is just a bunch of four panel grids. Where the kind of formal play comes in this one is the nested story structure, formal structure that Dash Shaw is using in this. And then there's some other interesting ideas, and I'm sure there's more going on in here than I've even picked up on. I feel like this is a 3 or 4 times read to even get a handle on the book type of thing. A properly complex book in a really interesting way. So we basically start with Ken and Carol, and Ken's brother is going to be marrying someone named Fiona. So that's we're introduced to that here. Then there's a switch over, and this is the nested structure of the book, which is where the formal trickery comes in this story. Is now you have Ken. He's now left the house for some purpose in this story. He's going to get the clothes for the wedding, and he's encountering this woman at the clothes store named Mel, and he strikes up a conversation with Mel, and Mel starts telling him a story. So you get these transition pages every so often that transition you from the character you were in their story to the next character, and then we're just in Mel's story for a while. The first time that happened, it took me a few pages to be like, whoa, wait, what the hell? Like, what happened to the guy I was reading about? Then I realized, oh, that's just the structure of what this is. So then we get a really quick transition. Like luckily Dash Shaw doesn't leave you confused for too long. He shows you the structure within a few pages. We switch over from Mel now to Kassan, or Kay, who is a figure model. And there's some really enjoyable scenes in here about like being a figure model and being a figure drawing instructor that I quite like. There are strange scenes where like a cut, like here you have again Mel talking to Ken, that will like cut into Mel's story in general. So it's like it will cut back to her telling the story. And there's weird cuts like that throughout the story that do ask a lot of the reader. And that's why I was saying, like, I think if I went back and read this a second or third time, this could be like the movie Tenet, where people are mapping out a timeline because characters will like re-show up in other people's stories and stuff. So if you're really into figuring out the web of a story, this is one that seems very intricately planned, that would have had a big chart to follow all of it, as you have this ensemble cast swirling around each other, telling each other things that include each other, which is all pretty interesting. So then we're into the bit about Kay being the model, and these were really interesting for me because I have been in many figure drawing classes as a student, and then I've taught figure drawing a few times as an instructor and worked with a lot of the models, and it's just really interesting it's just all the writing and the way this is presented from the point of view of the model is really interesting, and I think really well written from Dash Shaw. And he also really well observed. Like he's just saying, art school floors have lots of marks, spills, bits of tape, spots, and dents. I'd focus on a spot on the floor, just a bit of acrylic paint that dropped from my student's brush, and it's the center of my attention now. Just the mental games that someone has to play to try and hold a pose. I really like. I mean, I love this whole book, but I really like this section of it. Then you get this now where Carol from Ken and Carol in the beginning of the book is a student in Kay's class. So you have Kay and Carol, and that's what I'm saying. Not only is this like a nested story, but there's like an interconnected web through the nest. And someone could figure out a timeline on that, which would be pretty interesting. So then we switch from Kay to Professor Koretsky, who's the guy that's teaching the class. Obviously, that's interesting for me as well. Like seeing Dash Shaw write about a professor. He seems like kind of a dick, though. Like here he's snapping at this girl, but then she's also like this nightmare student where she's not paying attention, and he gets her attention, and she said, "Did you just snap at me? Oh my god, like I'm a dog? You know you're not supposed to have your headphones in. I told you at the beginning of the semester about Picasso. He was on my list." So basically she's given him a list of artists that trigger her because they're misogynists or whatever. And so she feels justified in putting on her earphones because he's talking about Picasso. So total nightmare student. That's the kind of shit that we have to deal with these days. These kids get indoctrinated in this stuff, and then they come to class thinking that they don't have to learn history because it might freak them out. So that's really well written in there and pretty funny. Professor Koretsky is having an affair with a gal named Mala, so that's where we hand off the baton to Mala in the story. Mala introduces us to Christy, just kind of giving you the sense. Christy here is someone that's kind of encouraging to Mala. And then Christy introduces us to Fiona. Fiona is someone that's mentioned earlier in the book in another section, so the web kind of weaves back in on itself. Fiona introduces us to this character, Dan, and we follow Dan for a while. There's some really interesting, this is actually a section where we do get some visual formal play, where you have Dan here, and he's like thinking about the intuition of his arms and just kind of dissociating his arms from himself. And I don't know how intentional this is, how controlled this is, but he goes into this like mental whiteout space while he's driving where he's not paying attention, and you can see through the paper. I don't know if that shows up on screen, but something about the way the arms can be seen through on the papers. And then on this page here, you get a blank image on the back, so you don't get anything showing through on this page, but then on this page you get stuff showing through. That seems pretty intentional to me. I couldn't draw any meaning out of it, but it did give that like zoned out kind of timeless sense of like, hey, I'm seeing things that are yet to come or things that have been. That's a pretty powerful manipulation of the reader's like physical state, which is pretty cool. Then at the end of Dan's story, which is a little over halfway through the book, you start going back up the stack. You start coming back out of each one of these is a story someone's telling someone else, and then you go back to, you know, the person that they were telling it to, and you come back through the book. And that's the structure of the book. I don't want to give away more than that. Within that structure, I think Dash Shaw covers a ton of different themes. So I don't even know I could say that there's a theme for this book. Again, I'd have to go back and read it, because I was just like getting to know everyone and getting to know the structure of the book. And I feel like now that I know everyone, if I went back and read it 3 or 4 times, especially like 2 times back to back, it would all come into focus. But that also then is like part of the theme, right? Is that the book is called Blurry. And so just the strategy of how it was told keeps the theme out of focus a little bit. And that's, I think, kind of like life. When you get an ensemble book like this, I don't know that there's so much a core theme as there is just trying to represent the state of being in the world and knowing people and how the world works. And that's how I feel about this book, that it's a very good just representation of how the world actually works, like what it feels like to be a person living in the world, kind of jumping into people's stories for little bits at a time, you know, a few hours a day. That's, to me, what this book feels like an expression of. But I would have to go back and read it a couple more times to be sure. And that's not because it's poorly done. It's because it's a very rich, dense work that needs to be consumed a couple times to really be understood. So, as always with Dash Shaw, absolute genius. And I hope we do get to interview him. But either way, thanks for the free book, whoever sent this along. And yeah, I really look forward to talking to Dash. I hope we get to do that. House on Fire by Matt Battaglia is a just gorgeous book where Matt's kind of making an emotional response to the years of COVID and wrapping that into a sci-fi dystopian future that really the sci-fi dystopian's backgrounded and you're focused on the emotional journey of two characters in a really beautiful way. And then that's enhanced by Matt's like really awesome, loose, kind of Paul Popish dry brush work. And then Sean and Matt have worked to get this second kind of orange spot color in there that's going to look really, really beautiful and has allowed Matt to use his dry brush technique to add tone to the thing too. So with Sean's production technique, this is going to be a gorgeous book with a lot of heart.